Let me tell you something most people won't say out loud. The breakthrough doesn't arrive with noise. It doesn't announce itself with applause. It shows up quietly after you've been tested in silence. If you've been feeling pressure, if life has been heavy but your spirit hasn't quit, if progress feels slow but your vision keeps pulling you forward, that's not a coincidence. That's alignment. You're not behind. You're not lost. You're being shaped. What you're walking into now is the breakthrough phase. The phase you prayed for. The phase you paid for with discipline, patience, and sacrifice. Let's talk about why this moment matters. Nothing breaks through without resistance, and you already know that because life didn't give you a smooth road, it gave you weight to carry. Diamonds don't form in comfort, they form under pressure, and athletes don't peak without strain. So if you've been feeling stretched, tired, tested, pushed to the edge, understand this, you're not unlucky. You're under construction. The pressure you felt wasn't punishment, it was training. And training doesn't feel good while it's happening. It burns, it humbles you, it exposes every weakness you try to ignore. But that burn is information. It's teaching your body, your mind, your spirit how to operate at a higher level. Every delay you faced, every closed door, every long night staring at the ceiling wondering if it was worth it, was sharpening your focus. When things come easy, you move sloppy. When things take time, you move precise. Pressure forces you to choose what really matters. It strips away distractions, fake goals, fake people, fake urgency until all that's left is the mission. You had to learn endurance. Not the motivational kind, but the quiet kind of type that keeps showing up when nobody is clapping. The type that keeps working when motivation disappears and discipline has to take over. There were moments you felt like you were moving, but nothing around you was changing, and that messes with your head. That's when most people quit, not because they're incapable, but because they misinterpret silence as failure. But silence is where structure gets built. It's where habits get cemented, where patience gets tested, where ego gets burned off. You weren't being ignored. You were being isolated for a reason. Because not everyone is supposed to see the blueprint while it's being drawn. Studies on high performers show something consistent. People who go through prolonged struggle before success develop stronger decision-making and emotional control. And that makes sense because struggle forces you to think before you move. When resources are limited, mistakes cost more. So you learn to calculate, you learn to pause, you learn to respond instead of react. You stop making emotional decisions because you've already paid the price for those. You start moving smarter, not louder. That's growth, even if it doesn't feel like it at the time. Think about it, the pressure taught you how to stay calm in chaos. When everything was uncertain, you learned how to keep your vision steady. When plans fell apart, you learned how to pivot without losing direction. That's not accidental, that's preparation. You learn how to sit with discomfort without running from it. You learn how to keep your word to yourself even when nobody was checking. You learn how to be consistent in conditions that weren't ideal. And that's a rare skill. You weren't being held back, you were being reinforced. Like concrete before it hardens, it has to sit under weight undisturbed so it can set properly. If you move it too soon, it cracks. If success came early, it might have collapsed you. The delays were protection. The losses were lessons. The setbacks were recalibration. Life was adding layers to you, so when opportunity finally meets you, it doesn't crush you, it fits you. There were times you questioned yourself, not because you lacked ability, but because the journey was longer than expected, and that doubt didn't destroy you, it forced you to get honest. You had to confront your weaknesses, tighten your routines, sharpen your standards. You couldn't hide behind potential anymore. You had to turn effort into structure and hope into strategy. That's when things started changing internally, even if externally nothing moved yet. Pressure taught you humility. It showed you that talent alone isn't enough. It made you respect process. It made you fall in love with repetition, with fundamentals, with doing the boring work correctly over and over again. You learn that showing up tired still counts. You learn that progress isn't always loud. Sometimes it's invisible until it compounds. And that patience you develop, that's an unfair advantage now. Look back at the moments that almost broke you. The days you felt overlooked, underpaid, underestimated. Those moments built your backbone. They taught you how to stand alone without losing faith. They taught you how to work without validation. They taught you how to keep your vision intact even when results were delayed. And that inner stability is what separates people who sustain success from people who flash and fade. You learned emotional control because you had to. You couldn't afford to be reactive. You couldn't afford to burn bridges every time you were frustrated, so you learned restraint, you learned timing, you learned how to channel anger into fuel instead of destruction. That kind of control doesn't come from books, it comes from experience, earned the hard way. If you survive what almost broke you, you're built for what's coming next. Because what's coming next requires strength, not just skill. It requires patience, not just ambition. It requires clarity, not just hunger. And now you have all of that. You're not just ready to receive, you're ready to maintain, to grow, to protect what you build. The pressure refined your character. It slowed you down long enough to build a foundation that won't crack under success. You learn that rushing costs more than waiting. You learn that consistency beats intensity. And you learn that staying solid in hard times prepares you to stay grounded in good times. That's the real preparation. So when you step into the next phase, don't forget the weight you carried. Don't forget the nights you pushed through without guarantees. That pressure didn't come to stop you, it came to shape you. And now you move differently. You think differently. Because you weren't crushed by the pressure, you were conditioned by it. There's a moment in your journey where something clicks and it's quiet, but it's powerful. You stop explaining yourself to people who never plan to understand you anyway. You stop defending your vision to those who don't have the discipline to carry one. You stop needing approval because you realize approval doesn't pay the cost of becoming who you're trying to be. Results do. Emotions don't build legacies, work does. And once that truth settles in, everything about how you move starts to change. Before that moment, it's easy to get distracted, trying to be seen, trying to be liked, trying to be validated. You post your plans, you talk about your goals, you look for confirmation that you're on the right path. But at some point, you realize talking about it doesn't move it forward. Explaining it doesn't make it real. Only building does. That's when you stop wasting energy on people's opinions and start investing it into your craft. Most people chase attention because attention feels like progress. Likes, comments, praise, applause, it gives a quick hit. But attention fades fast and it never replaces skill. Breakthrough people chase mastery because mastery lasts. When you master something, nobody can take it from you. You don't need to announce it. It shows in how you operate and how you solve problems and how you stay calm when things get hard. You understood that and it shifted your priorities. You learn to work when nobody was watching, and that's where real growth happens. When there's no audience, no applause, no external pressure, just you and the standard you set for yourself. You learn to show up consistently even when no one acknowledged the effort. You stay committed without praise, which is one of the hardest disciplines to develop, because praise can motivate, but the absence of it reveals who you really are. You kept your vision alive even when others doubted it, and that doubt could have been contagious, but you didn't let it infect you. There were moments when people questioned your silence. They thought you fell off or lost momentum, but they didn't see what was happening behind closed doors. They didn't see the hours you put into learning, refining, practicing, failing, and adjusting. You weren't disappearing, you were concentrating, you were investing, and that kind of focus changes the trajectory of your life. A lot of successful entrepreneurs talk about this phase. They mention how their biggest growth came when they pulled back socially and doubled down on skill building. They stopped being everywhere and started being effective. They traded parties for progress, conversations for concentration. They weren't antisocial, they were intentional. They understood that you can't build something real if you're constantly available to everything and everyone. Silence wasn't loneliness, it was strategy. You chose to be misunderstood for a season rather than distracted for a lifetime. You accepted that not everyone needs to know what you're working on, especially when it's still fragile. You protected your ideas from premature opinions. You protected your energy from unnecessary noise. And in that quiet space, momentum started building. Momentum doesn't always sound loud. Sometimes it looks like routines getting tighter, decisions getting sharper, habits getting stronger. You started stacking small wins that nobody noticed. You improved 1% at a time. You became more efficient, more disciplined, more precise. And those changes were invisible to outsiders, but they were transforming you from the inside out. You also learned that validation is unstable. It depends on moods, trends, and opinions. And building your identity on something that unstable is dangerous. So you detach from it. You stop needing people to clap for you to keep going. You stop needing reassurance every time things got hard. You learn to trust the work, you learn to trust the process. And that self-trust is powerful because it doesn't disappear when conditions change. There were days when it would have been easier to talk about what you were doing instead of doing it, but you chose the harder route. You let your progress be quiet. You let your improvement be private. You understood that real respect comes later after the results show up. And that patience saved you from burning out or losing direction. You also noticed something else. When you stopped seeking validation, your clarity increased. You weren't pulled in 100 directions anymore. You weren't adjusting your vision to fit other people's expectations. You started moving with intention, making decisions based on long-term impact instead of short-term reactions. That's when your work got sharper, because it was aligned with who you really are, not who you were trying to impress. And as you kept building, momentum started responding, opportunities started lining up, skills started compounding, people started noticing. But this time it didn't distract you because you were grounded. You didn't need to chase recognition anymore. It found you because the work was undeniable. That's the power of shifting from validation to building. You stop performing and start producing. You stop talking and start creating. You stop chasing attention and start attracting respect. And once that shift happens, there's no going back, because you've tasted the freedom of working for something bigger than applause. The quiet work, the unseen hours, the disciplined routines, all of it added up. And now when people ask how you did it, there's no long explanation, because the work explains it for you. At some point in your journey, something inside you changed. You realized that chasing fast money, chasing quick fame, chasing overnight success doesn't build anything that lasts. You saw it happen around you. The people who blew up in a flash disappeared just as fast. Their wins were shallow, temporary, fragile. Quick success can look bright, it can feel exciting, but under pressure it folds. Fast fame fades, fast money fades, and quick victories can crumble if your foundation isn't solid. That's when you decided to shift your vision, to step out of the short game and start playing for the long haul. You chose longevity. You chose a path that asks for patience, persistence, and dedication beyond immediate gratification. You started thinking in years instead of weeks. You stopped asking, how do I make this pop today? Or how do I get attention now? And started asking, how do I build something that lasts 10, 20, 30 years? You started building systems, not chasing shortcuts. You realized that shortcuts might get you a moment of satisfaction, but systems create momentum. Systems allow you to compound small gains over time. Systems are the engine that carries you through hard times when motivation isn't enough. You began to measure success not by the number of likes or followers or applause, but by the legacy you were creating, the real value that would endure long after the hype passed. This mindset is rare. It's rare because most people are wired to respond to the immediate, to the visible, to the easy reward. Instant gratification is everywhere. Society's built around it. But when you step away from it, when you resist the temptation to seek fast results, you unlock a power that's almost invisible to those still chasing the quick win. This power comes from patience. It comes from the ability to wait, to work, to trust that your effort today will bear fruit tomorrow. Research in psychology confirms it. People who delay gratification consistently outperform those who chase immediate rewards. They are calmer, more disciplined, more strategic. They understand that sacrifice now creates freedom later. That's the law of compounding applied to life itself. You stopped asking, how do I win today? And started asking, how do I win for life? That change in perspective rewired how you made decisions. Suddenly, the risks that once seemed unbearable were manageable because you were measuring them against a broader timeline. You started investing in skills instead of chasing hype. You started valuing depth over exposure, substance over style. You learned to prioritize relationships that lasted over connections that faded, investments that appreciated over instant cash, knowledge that compounded over time instead of fleeting trends. When you adopted this long game mindset, everything changed. Opportunities that might have seemed distant now had a path. Challenges that felt overwhelming were just steps in the process. You stopped fearing slow progress because you understood that slow and steady builds something no storm can shake. The small, consistent choices you make every day became the foundation of inevitable breakthroughs. You weren't relying on luck anymore. You were relying on the process. You weren't chasing applause. You were building permanence. People around you might have thought you were patient or even passive, but in truth, you were strategic. You understood that life doesn't reward impulsive decisions. It rewards preparation, consistency, and foresight. You built habits that would serve you long after the excitement of a quick win faded. You invested in your health, your mind, your craft, and your relationships, knowing these were the pillars that would carry the weight of long-term success. The work became quiet, deliberate, and deliberate work beats flashy effort every time. In this long game mindset, you also learned resilience. Quick wins are fragile. When they crumble, people collapse. But systems and strategy and long-term thinking give you the ability to endure failures, setbacks, and disappointments without losing direction. You understood that every challenge, every obstacle, every closed door was temporary and part of a larger plan. Each setback became a lesson, each struggle an opportunity to refine your approach, sharpen your skills, and reinforce your foundation. You were no longer reactive, you were proactive, building for the future rather than scrambling for the present. You stopped being impressed by temporary gains. You stopped measuring yourself against people who chased the spotlight and fell out of view. Instead, you measure your growth against your own standards, your own potential, your own progress. That inner alignment made your journey more fulfilling, more sustainable, and ultimately more powerful. It made your work quieter but more effective. It made your wins slower to arrive but unstoppable once they did. This shift didn't just change what you did, it changed who you were. Patience became part of your character. Discipline became a habit. Vision became a compass. You no longer needed external validation because your metrics were internal and based on long-term value. Your identity stopped depending on temporary results and started depending on the consistency of your effort, the integrity of your actions, and the depth of your commitment. And with this long game mindset, breakthroughs became inevitable. You understood that success is not about chasing moments, but about creating conditions where moments cannot be ignored. Every step you took, every habit you built, every skill you mastered was compounding silently behind the scenes. The effort that felt invisible today will produce undeniable results tomorrow. That's the power of thinking in years, not weeks. That's the power of playing for legacy, not applause. That's the power of the long game. Now, when people see your progress, they see results, but they don't see the years of consistent work, the patience, the discipline, the sacrifices. They see the victory, but you know the process was the real victory. You've moved past quick wins, past temporary recognition, past the highs and lows that distract most people. You've built a mindset designed to sustain success, endure challenges, and multiply value over time. That's why you're not just prepared for the next breakthrough, you're built for it. Because your foundation is strong, your vision is clear, and your approach is unstoppable. Learn to measure your life in growth, not in applause. You learn to invest in permanence, not instant gratification. You learn to play the long game, and that shift in perspective changed everything. Everything you do now is intentional. Every choice, every effort, every relationship, every investment is measured against the question, will this serve my long-term vision? And because of that, your breakthroughs are no longer a question of if, they are a matter of when. Here's the truth that most people don't want to hear, the truth nobody romanticizes. Breakthroughs are built in the quiet, in the repetitive, in the routines that feel boring. Nobody wants to talk about waking up at 5 a.m. when your body screams for 5 more hours of sleep. Nobody wants to talk about putting in the work day after day without any excitement, without applause, without someone noticing. But that's exactly where the foundation of greatness is laid. It's in the moments you choose to show up even when it feels like nothing is happening. It's in the basics, repeated over and over again until they compound into something unstoppable. Consistency beats talent. Talent can give you sparks, but without consistency, it fizzles. Consistency beats motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. But consistency is a force. It's quiet, but relentless. It moves the needle when inspiration is absent. It builds momentum that nobody can steal from you. And when you commit to showing up every single day, the results you've been chasing start stacking without you even noticing at first. You keep planting seeds in silence, and one day you look up and realize your garden is thriving. Look at any long-term success story. Athletes, business leaders, creators, they didn't reach their peak because every day felt exciting. They didn't feel inspired every morning. What made them great was showing up anyway. Running the drills nobody sees, doing the work nobody praises, grinding through the repetition that looks boring to the outside world. That's how skill is forged. That's how discipline is built. That's how ordinary people become extraordinary. You stayed disciplined even when results were invisible. You kept your routines even when it felt like you were getting nowhere. You kept grinding even when everyone else around you was distracted by shiny things, instant gratification, or the latest hype. You understood that progress isn't always dramatic. Sometimes progress is invisible until it compounds into undeniable results. And that patience, that commitment to showing up is exactly what's going to make your breakthrough so powerful. There were mornings when your body ached, your mind was tired, and the world felt heavy. Nobody was watching, nobody was cheering, but you still got up, you still did the work, you still honored the commitment you made to yourself. That's the mark of discipline. That's what separates those who get a taste of temporary success from those who create something permanent. It's not glamorous, it's not flashy, but it's real, it's effective, and it's yours. Consistency also builds trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your process, trust that the small efforts you make every day actually matter. When you learn to trust your own work ethic, to trust that showing up consistently will move you forward, you stop chasing validation from the outside world. You stop needing constant feedback because you've seen the results of your commitment over time. That internal trust is powerful. It becomes the engine that carries you through the toughest seasons. The boring work teaches you patience. It teaches you humility. It teaches you that results don't arrive on your schedule, they arrive on the schedule of growth. You realize that every small action, every phone call, every practice session, every late night or early morning adds up. And the moment you accept that, you stop feeling frustrated when the results don't come immediately. You stop quitting halfway. You start investing fully in the long-term game. And that's when transformation becomes inevitable. Consistency also shapes your character. It develops a mindset that doesn't crumble under pressure, that doesn't get distracted by failure or comparison. When you show up every day, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, you learn resilience. You learn that your identity isn't defined by the highs and lows of temporary success. You learn that your value is determined by the discipline you maintain, not the applause you receive. You learn to rely on yourself and your own standards, and that confidence can't be shaken. There's a compounding effect to consistency. One day, the work you've been doing quietly, the effort that seemed invisible, suddenly manifests. The foundation you built in silence supports results that are undeniable. That's why some breakthroughs look sudden to outsiders. They only see the moment. The results appear. Not the years of repetition, of showing up, of being consistent when nobody cared. Every habit you reinforced, every early morning, every late night, every time you push through boredom is now converging into something unstoppable. And because you stayed disciplined, even in the invisible seasons, you're ready. You're ready to handle the success when it comes. You've proven to yourself that you can endure, that you can commit, that you can grind without recognition. That experience equips you to handle momentum when it accelerates, to handle challenges when they arise, to handle opportunities when they show up. You're no longer dependent on excitement to perform. You've learned to perform because you've trained yourself to do so consistently. Consistency is underrated because it's not glamorous. Nobody writes songs about doing the same thing every day. Nobody posts highlights of early mornings and late nights without reward. But it's the cornerstone of every legendary story, and you've been living that truth. You've been showing up even when it's boring, even when it's hard, even when it's invisible. That's why your results are about to become undeniable, because the work has already been done. You've built the habits, reinforced the routine, strengthened the discipline. The breakthrough isn't a surprise. It's the natural outcome of everything you've committed to. And now, when the world finally sees your work, it will look effortless, but you'll know the truth. It's the product of repetition, patience, and consistency. Every moment of showing up, every mundane task, every quiet effort has compounded into momentum that can't be stopped. That's why consistency, even when it feels boring, is one of the most powerful forces in life. It turns ordinary effort into extraordinary results. It turns discipline into destiny. And it turns you into someone who can handle not just success, but sustained greatness. The reason this breakthrough is different is because you're different. You're not the same person who started this journey. You've been through tests that would have broken most people, and instead of breaking, you adapted, you grew, you became stronger. You're calmer under pressure now. The storms that used to rattle your mind barely touch you anymore. You've learned how to carry weight without letting it crush your spirit. You've learned how to operate while chaos rages around you, and that calm becomes your edge. People who panic under pressure get lost in the moment, but you've learned to respond, not react. You've learned to think, not just feel. That difference matters because it allows you to see opportunity clearly and act decisively when others are blinded by stress. You become more selective with your energy. You don't give it away to distractions, to negativity, to people who drain rather than build. You've learned that energy is currency, and how you spend it determines the trajectory of your life. Every choice about where to invest your focus, who to spend time with, what projects to commit to, it all adds up. And because you become selective, you protect yourself from burnout and stay sharp when it counts. You've learned the value of boundaries, and that clarity has a power all its own. People can't manipulate you when you know your limits. You can't be shaken when you've defined your terms. You've also learned timing, the rare kind of wisdom that only comes from experience. You know when to move, when to wait, and when to walk away. You've been through seasons where impatience would have cost you everything, and you survived because you learned to read the signs, to understand the patterns, to trust your instincts. That kind of patience doesn't feel heroic in the moment, but it builds an internal rhythm that aligns you with opportunity in ways that feel effortless to those who haven't developed it. Timing becomes a muscle you flex, and it keeps you from wasting energy on what isn't ready for you yet. Pain didn't harden you, it refined you. Every loss, every setback, every failure was not a punishment but a teacher. It stripped away what didn't serve you and revealed what did. Pain taught you discipline. Pain taught you resilience. Pain taught you humility. And from that process, you rebuilt yourself stronger, sharper, more focused. You learned how to extract lessons even from experiences that felt unfair. You learned how to take blows without losing vision. You learned how to transform challenges into stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. The rebuilding process wasn't easy, but it was necessary, and it prepared you for a level of opportunity that few are equipped to handle. And now, when opportunity meets preparation, it doesn't overwhelm you, it fits you. You've done the work, you've built the habits, you've refined your character, and now the world aligns with the person you've become. The doors that open, the chances that arrive, the moments that present themselves, they match your readiness. You no longer chase opportunity blindly. You move with discernment, knowing that when the right moment comes, you can handle it. You can operate at that level without fear, without doubt, without hesitation. Opportunity isn't a test anymore. It's a natural extension of your preparedness. This phase isn't about luck. People talk about luck like it's random, but you know better. Alignment is what matters. When preparation, patience, skill, and timing meet, it looks like luck to the outside world, but you understand the truth. It's the culmination of years of deliberate effort. You've aligned your habits with your goals, your mindset with your mission, your energy with your purpose. That alignment attracts opportunities and positions you to maximize them. Nothing you're experiencing now is accidental. Every choice, every sacrifice, every moment of focus has brought you to this exact point. You earned this moment through patience, discipline, and vision. You've walked through seasons of struggle where the work was invisible, the results were delayed, and nobody noticed. You stayed committed anyway. You stayed focused anyway. You stayed disciplined anyway. You held a vision even when the world doubted it, even when your own confidence wavered. And that persistence created a foundation so strong that now, when the breakthrough arrives, it isn't fragile. It's unshakable. You've built a structure that can carry success, growth, and influence without cracking. You've been rebuilt not in the way people expect, not with shortcuts, not with easy victories, but in the way that matters. You've been rebuilt through experience, through repetition, through lessons learned the hard way. You've become someone who can handle abundance without losing direction, someone who can lead without losing humility, someone who can win without losing the principles that got you here. That's why this breakthrough is sustainable, why it's real, why it's powerful. It doesn't just happen. It arrives because the person you've become can handle it fully. And now you step into this moment with clarity. You understand your value, you understand your worth, you understand your purpose. You know what to take on, what to let go, and what to protect. You move differently than you did before because you've been refined, rebuilt, and aligned. You're no longer chasing success blindly. You're shaping it intentionally. The breakthrough isn't overwhelming because you've been strengthened in ways that allow you to carry it with confidence and integrity. You're ready because you've been rebuilt. You're ready because the pressure, the pain, the consistency, the long-term thinking, the patience, the discipline, all of it has created a version of you capable of not just handling this moment, but thriving in it. You're ready because your foundation is solid. Your vision is clear, and your habits are unshakable. You're ready because the process that shaped you was intentional and complete. And now, everything you've worked for, everything you've built, everything you've endured aligns perfectly to meet you here. This is your moment. You prepared, you refined, you rebuilt, and the world is finally going to see the results of everything you've put in the work for. So if you feel like something is shifting, if doors are opening without force, if your confidence is quiet but unshakable, that's the breakthrough phase. Don't rush it, don't doubt it, don't announce it, protect it, build on it. Walk through it with humility and hunger, because the same way you survived the struggle, you're about to handle the success. And this time, it's not just a win, it's a foundation. You're not just making progress, you're making history, one focused step at a time.